We're talking about the most dangerous man in America. But who is it? Is it Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes? Because the right, or parts of the right, some people might call them the Zionist right, they might call them the neocon right, Con Inc. They're going absolutely mental.
Boring right?
Could do. They're trying to cancel Tucker Carlson. They seem to be going at him more than Fuentes, but it's because he had Fuentes on his show. So we're going to break this down. And this kind of new, it's not a new divide, but it's reached a new level. And just full cards on the table. I'm pretty neutral on Israel. How neutral? Well, I'm mates with Leo Kearse, and I still get on with Nima Parvini. That's how I'd put it.
Right.
The ultimate fence sitter. When they were talking about the sensible centrist, they were talking about you.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think?
That's what I'm like on the issue. I'm kind of, because I'm English and it's in the desert somewhere. You know, but how neutral is that? Leo is literally kissing the wall as we speak. But if you ever see Nima kissing the wall...
He's doing more than just kiss it.
Right. If you see Nima kissing the wall, it's AI or Mossad have brainwashed him. That's the only option. So my view is, but my full cards on the table, on the Tucker thing, I am slightly biased toward Tucker because I like Tucker and I'm pro-free speech. And the people cancelling him, it's not really an existing bias. It's more just I'm looking at their behaviour and going, I'm not sure this is the best behaviour. But, and on Fuentes, he is very talented and funny, but he does, of course, have some abhorrent views. He thinks Game of Thrones is better than Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yes.
We all know you can't have that kind of view in a society. It just won't work. So we do know he's controversial. So that's just my full cards on the table. So, but this segment is about the response. So Tucker had Nick on. It's not so much about the content. It's more about the... Oh, can I get the math? It's more about the...
Can you?
I have to ask nicely or something. I have to ask Tony Blair.
You have to tell me it's inevitable.
The mouse is inevitable. Let me just... If I can find this and not be too much of a boomer. Basically, I'm not going to focus too much on the content. This is the only bit you need to watch.
But I'm always, I think I'm just too old or something. I'm like, why isn't anyone married? You tell me, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women.
We missed the best bit of that.
Have another go.
We'll try again. This isn't my fault. People
You are boomering.
That's not my fault.
Right.
That is not my fault. That Elgato signal thing was not me.
I'm sorry I called you gay, by the way. But I'm always, I think I'm just too old or something. I'm like, why isn't anyone married? You tell me, why aren't people married?
Well, I mean, honestly, it's the women.
Right, so that was the best clip from the whole thing, and that somehow has got 1.1 million views on my Twitter. But that's all you need to know for the content.
It was a good clip.
It's a good clip. I cropped it myself. You know, I do make an effort, but really, it's more about the response. So,
there's some impressive work.
Thank you very much. I did watch the whole thing.
At least 5 minutes.
The whole thing was good. You know, it was a backstory about Nick. It was a bit of stuff. They agreed on that OnlyFans whoever's running it should be put in jail, and they agreed on they don't like Christian Zionists, and they disagreed on some other things, but. The attacks on Tucker have been brutal. So this person says Tucker's father is crying in heaven. He's rolling in his grave. Tucker waited until he died this past year to destroy his father's legacy. His father was an American patriot. His father was a Christian Zionist. His father led, I don't know what that means, but anyway, Tucker's a traitor to his father's name. He said Christians have a brain virus. So they're all trying to attack him and saying...
Who's this person and what authority do they have to say all of this?
I don't even know. It's just one of the most brutal attacks. Because Tucker said his least favourite people were Christian Zionists. So people have been really zoning in on that and saying, oh, he's betraying the memory of Charlie Kirk, which is...
Well, because his dad was a CIA agent.
Yeah.
He's betraying the good work of the CIA.
I don't know. It's because she's saying his father was a Christian Zionist. Anyway, Josh Hammer... The great Charlie Kirk is rolling in his grave right now, simply despicable. So that's just simply the fact that Tucker had Fuentes on means that Charlie Kirk's rolling in his grave, and it's despicable.
I don't know. I'm not persuaded by that.
But Fuentes does point out that Mr. Hammer here has said in the past that Europe will never change. Jew hatred is inherent in its collective DNA. Seems quite an extreme view in itself, and a fairly sort of racialist view, because it's saying it's right in your DNA and it's collective. So, maybe not the best authority to listen to, possibly.
I don't trust that Josh Hammer has mine or anybody else's except his own best interests in mind.
That seems reasonable from what we know. And he did a whole mail piece, which was paywall, so I didn't link to the piece. But he said in the piece, Hammer did, about Tucker, the fox, meaning Tucker, is now comfortably ensconced in the hen house. And unless the fox is neutralized, the victim could be the entire extant GOP coalition itself. So he's saying Tucker should be neutralized, and people have taken offense to this, saying, why are you using that kind of language? Doesn't seem great. Hammer maintains he just means it in a completely innocent sense, to make neutral cause to undergo neutralization, to make something ineffective.
You've got the mouse down here. Just move it to the right. There you go.
Mate, Leo can even do it himself, so it's all levels. So he's saying it's completely innocent. Look at that. It's just normal usage. But then Dave Smith points out he actually cropped out the third definition, which you can check on dictionary.com. And if you do go on dictionary.com and you look for the third definition, you find it is military, to put out of action or make incapable of action to neutralize an enemy position. So that's people saying, like, should you use that kind of language immediately after Charlie Kirk? I don't know if he meant it or not in that way, but you get the idea. Whitlock's not buying Hammer's thing. He says you start an article calling Tucker Carlson the most dangerous man in America and close the same article saying he needs to be neutralized. So
for me, it's the threat that Tucker Carlson is obviously just such a seismically influential person that they're afraid of him alone.
Yeah,
regardless of any coalition he might build around him.
Definitely, and the point of this is they're going very hard at Tucker anyway, and Dinesh actually went as far in this kind of platforming debate of posting texts from Charlie Kirk, which I think is wrong because he's dead. He says, I'm posting 2 exchanges with Charlie Kirk where he calls Nick Fuentes vermin.
Are we playing the Charlie Kirk football now? Candace Owens and other people post texts of his where he's saying, like, oh, I might have to drop off the pro-Israel train, and Dinesh D'Souza's doing the other thing, posting texts where he's calling him Fuentes vermin.
Yeah.
Is that just what Charlie Kirk is now? He's a guy who you invoke to try and score points on your side.
Exactly. And people said he was a martyr. He's almost become like a religious figure. You know, you well, look at this part of the Bible to justify what I did. Someone else is saying, look at this part. And the same with any religious text. He's almost become that. You go to him to justify your own side, as you say. And I think it's pretty wrong to do that. But yeah, so he called Nick vermin, insists that my debating him, Dinesh is debating him, and defeating his arguments, nevertheless amplifies him. One can only imagine what Charlie would say about Tucker's butt-licking interview with Fuentes.
Dinesh D'Souza recently did a debate with
Nick and he addresses
Fuentes.
That. He says it's different. We'll address that in a sec. So yeah, he goes.
They were very polite to one another.
I know. And Fuentes, Kirk said, you have no idea the damage you did by talking to him, meaning Fuentes. You're making him even bigger. And he attacked Dinesh for that debate. Now, Fuentes' response to this is quite interesting, so I'll just play a little bit of it. He's saying, actually, who was the more dangerous, him or the left?
Charlie Kirk says about me and Dinesh D'Souza's debate, this was a massive mistake that you did this. He's vermin, and you just gave him one of the biggest boosts of his career. This is about me. Charlie says you have no idea the damage you did by talking to him and complimenting him. You are making him even bigger. We've been fighting this guy for 6 years. And you are the first mainstream voice to debate and give him a compliment, which then makes him bigger and more powerful. That's Charlie Kirk. Which is very interesting. Because the legacy of Charlie Kirk is open discussion. Q&A. He'll debate anybody. That's what makes America great. Free speech. Not for me. For the left. Free speech and debate and engagement in a marketplace of ideas for the left. The left, which shot him in the face and then celebrated it. Is there not a lesson in this?
All right. And so that whole video is very good, but
and
I think
look, Charlie Kirk is dead.
He just points out the left are the far more dangerous ones. And yet don't we see, Destiny on Jordan Peterson's show and all this? It's true, they will platform the left, but what you can't ever do is platform Fuentes. And yet who's actually the more dangerous and who actually should be accepted in society? Why is it the people that are actually killing people now? So I think it's a fairly reasonable point. And Dinesh responded, fascinating response from Nick Fuentes. I've never agreed with the strategy of suppression. My objective in debating him was to give his ideas a fair hearing. My critique of Tucker's interview was that it involved no real criticism. Tucker shamelessly played cheerleader for Nick. So he claims it's about the tone of it. You can debate him as long as you sort of challenge him.
And on Nick's thing about how they are more than welcome to debate the left and open up to the left, I think it's because ultimately a lot of the right-wing conservatism boils back down to a kind of civic national liberalism, right? And on that, ultimately, the end goal to civic national liberalism and a kind of leftism could be seen as the striving towards a Karl Popperian open society style governance model, whether they realize it or not. And this is something that Burnham points out. This is something that Richard Pipes points out in his history of the Soviet Union and the Russian Revolution, is that when you are operating on essentially the same basis or towards similar goals and you have a similar metaphysic underpinning everything, those people on the center-right in America see the leftists as liberals who've just gone a little bit too far. They've just gone a little bit off track, and we can bring them back on track. Whereas the right, people like Fuentes, who actually believe in things like hierarchy, a greater spirituality, because he's a Catholic and everything, and believe that there is basis of things like race. They see them as the complete opposite of them, and something that would be dangerous and oppositional to their ultimate goals.
Yeah, they seem to instinctively invoke the friend enemy against him far more than against a Destiny type, to the point where Kirk, in a private message to be fair, calls Fuentes vermin, but Peterson, in a public tweet, called Fuentes a rat, which is pretty extreme when he's meant to be helping young men. I know he's struggling at the moment and he's ill, but he did call him a rat. And where he had Destiny on his show, so it's a completely different treatment.
Destiny, who is objectively a morally worse person than Nick Fuentes, no matter what outrageous shock doc stuff that Nick Fuentes has said in the past, he's never gone as far as to celebrate his political rivals being murdered, or to try and encourage that to happen like Destiny has.
Right, I think that's fair. But yes, and Seth Dillon here is trying to make a similar distinction to Dinesh and say, well, it's about how you do it. So you can have him on your show as long as you do it basically how Seth Dillon wants.
Well, let me just be clear about where I'm coming from on this, because a lot of people have tried to misconstrue and dishonestly portray me as being in favor of censorship, which, no one's more against censorship than I am. I have fought for free speech every step of the way. I've fought for free speech, not just for myself and for my own company, but for people who I disagree with, people who I think have terrible ideas, people who, a lot of people would like to see censored. I have gone on record saying I would like to see their voices in the public square, because no one should be able to decide what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. As long as your speech is lawful, you should be allowed to talk in the public square. And so, I was one of the first ones and one of the most vocal ones who was coming out in favor of Nick Fuentes being restored on Twitter when he was suspended. And I did that for a reason. It was on principle. It's not because I like what he has to say. It's because I love that he has the right to say it. And so, defending that right is very important to me. And so it's not a matter of, should he be allowed to speak? Of course he should. Sit down with him, have an interview with him, have a conversation with him. That's fine. But challenge and confront the things that he says. If you disagree with his ideas, if you think that he's got some bad ideas or he has some beliefs that you don't share, challenge him on that, confront him on that. That's how the marketplace of ideas really works, is when you have the bad ideas and the good ideas come together and they clash. And so if you're not willing to do that, if you're just having people on and saying, and for the sake of free speech, I'm going to have this conversation, but I'm not going to challenge them, well, in that case, all you're really doing is normalizing or mainstreaming more radical and extreme ideas without them getting the pushback and the confrontation that they deserve. And the only assumption, the only conclusion that we can draw from that is that you agree with those ideas if you're not willing to challenge them. And so if you don't want to be mistaken for holding those views yourself, then you should take that opportunity when you have it. Be the free speech advocate who gives them a voice, but then use your own speech to push back on that voice when you disagree with it.
All right, I mean,
sounds like Seth should do that then. If he's the exemplar for how to conduct an interview, how to push back, you have him on, Seth, and you push back until your heart's content. Scrutinise him.
Well, the problem is, it's a lot easier to say that than to do it. When you're actually speaking to somebody in person, it's a lot more difficult to potentially be rude and push back at them, especially because the way it manifests in internet debate in particular, when you behave like that, is it often manifests into bad faith debate tactic style arguments, right?
Yeah.
The other problem is, the reason that I don't think he wants to do it, is that, you can push back against ideas, but what if he convinces you? What if the strength of his arguments and logic and evidence actually ends up convincing you? And so that's one of the reasons I think they want to sequester, well, it's obviously the reason they want to sequester and censor Nick Fuentes and keep him out of the public eye, is that ultimately a lot of the things that he says can be convincing and can be backed up with evidence. And so they don't want to have people exposed to it, and they don't necessarily want to expose themselves to it. Because it's very, very easy to take clips of Nick out of context when he's interacting with the super chatters, which is where most of the objectionable stuff that he says comes from, because he hates the super chatters and he finds them very annoying and he doesn't like the questions that they ask. But if you actually watch his shows, and you mainly focus on the actual content that comes before the super chats, where most of the time he's tired and bored and a bit frustrated with his audience, then it's a lot more reasonable and there's a lot less to object to.
Yeah, I think that's some really good points there. It's a couple of things bothered me, even though it sounded reasonable enough from Seth Dillon's. One is he wants to dictate Tucker's content, and he's a much greater figure. So it's sort of a bit like, why doesn't Tucker just do the interview he wants? How about that? But the other thing is, you said the arguments. He doesn't really make the arguments. I see Seth Dillon a lot not making the arguments, but saying we should make the arguments, and mainly just trying to shut people down while saying, well, you just got to push back. It's like, why don't you make the arguments then? Just make the arguments in your tweets. Just make the argument, make it there. Then we can compare the argument. But like you say, is that what he really wants? And an example here is he does something here which is basically guilt by association, which I think is a lefty thing to do. I mean, I think of Sam Harris once speaking to Douglas Murray, and he said to him, well, you shouldn't have spoken. This was public on a podcast. He said, you shouldn't have spoken to Stefan Molyneux because he spoke to someone else. It might have been someone like Jared Taylor. Right. And it's like, and Douglas Murray said, well, I just speak to people. They seem all right. Like, it's like, do we have to do this guilt by association game? It just seems a bit lame.
In Douglas Murray's defense as well, at least he actually went and had the debate with Dave Smith. Right, he actually just went and had the thing.
Yeah. Although when you want to talk about pushing back, that was an example of what I was saying a moment ago, which is that if you go into the discussion with the pure intent only of pushing back without actually discussing the arguments, you will come across as unfair, you will come across as argumentative, and you will begin arguing in bad faith.
Yeah, sure.
Which is something that Murray did in that debate.
Yes.
But again, you know what? Fair play. I'll give him the credit for having gone on in the first place.
Yeah, although it was similar, and just his whole argument was you shouldn't really have a voice. You're not as legitimate as me. It was basically the whole thing, which is what these guys are saying. Seth Dillon, Tucker wouldn't be censoring anyone by declining to have them on his show, just as Turning Point USA wouldn't be censoring Tucker if they stopped inviting him to events. Such platforms are not the public square. None of us are entitled to them. So it's not a matter of censorship, but responsibility and discernment. Who you talk to and how you talk to them matters. So he's trying to get Tucker cancelled from Turning Point, and he's saying guilt by association. So I find it a little bit lame. And he says again here, the problem isn't platforming, it's promotion. This is some new distinction I've never heard of. You can share your platform if you're fortunate enough to have one with anyone, but not everyone should be promoted from it. Some people should only be offered a platform for the purpose of exposure and repudiation. So
isn't this basically leftist argument?
Yeah,
I think so.
They should only be offered it if you're going to ambush them.
Freedom of speech, not freedom of reach, is essentially what he is saying here.
Exactly. And repudiation literally means refuse to accept, reject, or deny the truth or validity of. I checked. So, just double check. So, what's the difference between that and not having them on? You were saying only have them on to repudiate and say that they're telling lies. So then why even have them on? Tucker just wants to have them on and have the genuine conversation and see what the truth is. He's like saying, no, you can have them on, but only if they're having them on to set them up and dunk on them.
This is Maoist struggle session right here. The only reason to have them on is to have them sit silently in the corner while you try and shame them. Yeah. That's like literally Maoist struggle sessions. Okay, that's a terrible idea.
It's a good point, because Lauren Chen says, this is what it actually sounds like to be woke right, by the way. Fair point. With all this woke right stuff, everyone calling each other woke right. That is more woke right than the people that get called woke right. IMHO. And George mocks it here. If you listen to this interesting conversation between two American citizens, you are literally worse than Satan. Not only should your voice be taken away, you should be fired from your job and not allowed to earn or spend money for the rest of your life. And that is kind of where it is.
I do like George.
Funny, isn't it? And that.
Well, the thing is, comics. He is somebody who probably doesn't agree with everything that Nick says, but he's not going to try and call for him to be deplatformed, and he's going to give him a fair shot as well.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of example that Seth Dillon should be setting if he wants to live up to what he's saying.
Could call it America. Cernovich quite similarly balanced. None of the people screaming at about Tucker Carlson have any objective moral standards. Reid Hoffman goes on the All In podcast and Joe Lonsdale show, and that's fine. Hoffman is total scum, an Epstein associate and recruiter, also funded lawfare against Trump. So it is true that it's certain people that you can't have. Then you sort of look at others and go, hang on, why them though? Cassandra, who's also cool and follows me, which is my sole criterion. It's funny that the Israel right, who most people have never heard of, Seth Dillon, Josh Hammer, Will Chamberlain, etc. Will Chamberlain follows me as well, so he's all right. Think they can still gatekeep figures like Tucker and Nick. Both of them are pretty much household names. This isn't 2015. What are you going to do? Keep them off Fox News and podcasts smaller than theirs, lol. Gatekeeping isn't what it used to be, which I think is a fair point.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, Tucker and Nick both have much bigger audiences than these guys.
Whereas no one actually knows who Josh Hammer is, except for when he attacks Tucker and Nick. And Glenn Greenwald points out they still have Ben Shapiro and CBS News and he actually looks at the Ben Shapiro monthly gain subscribers, and it's flatlined brutally this year. And
what caused that?
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? And there's another one which is for monthly gained views for Shapiro, very, very similar. Doing well back in 23, 25, not so much, which I think is a fair point. And then this one as well, similar point about Josh Hammer on a podcast 9 hours ago, 240 views, 1 like. This is the guy who thinks he gets to tell the American right who they should listen to, and that Tucker Carlson should be neutralized. So yeah, it's a fair point. Like, why is it up to them? I think that is reasonable, being very objective. Oren McIntyre quotes Seth Dillon, it's not platforming, it's promotion. It isn't a friend-enemy distinction, it's healthy gatekeeping. The tortured attempts to redefine terms is sad, but ultimately it's good that we got here. We're all political realists now. Everyone has discarded the pretense of classical liberalism and the marketplace of ideas. Elite theory for the win. He's saying, look,
that's kind of a good point.
Yeah, it's a great point from Aaron.
He's saying they're doing the same, but they're doing it with this disingenuous.
Well, they've got double speak.
Yeah.
They've got their own double speak. No. I'm just doing healthy gatekeeping, says James Lindsay. I hate Schmidt, by the way.
Yes,
don't read Schmidt.
Yeah, it's just marketplace of ideas, but his ideas are bad, and you shouldn't have them on. Or if you do, you should challenge them. And my theory there is that their side is basically the one in more power, or has been. Whereas the Fuentes side, they want to scream as loud as possible. And they're actually just saying what they think very openly, like it or hate it. Because they're saying America first, it's not about Israel, and they're trying to get attention. Whereas the one that's in power tends to be more obscure, tends to be more oblique the way they go about things. Notice Keir Starmer, when Donald Trump's around, says, we've got a long tradition of free speech. He doesn't say, I'm basically a tyrant who's against free speech, because it sounds bad. So the ones who have a bit more power at the moment, they can't just come out and make their argument, which is... Yeah. And it's also a harder argument to make, I would say, that you should give Israel special treatment. It's probably a harder argument.
It is when your entire campaign slogan is an absolute term like America first.
Yeah.
Apart from one country. Yeah. So it's...
Well, I mean, for many countries as well who do prioritize foreign nations over their own, it would be a lot easier to make the argument that maybe we should help out other foreign nations if those foreign nations weren't doing better than us and our domestic situation weren't so obviously terrible and getting worse.
Right, that's another good point. And notice, by the way, the left are kind of absent. I don't want to do too long, but notice the left are kind of absent from all this. It's just the sort of neocon right. It's fascinating. Like, the left are just letting it happen because it's anti-Israel. So they're like, let him cook. They don't criticize Fuentes. They haven't criticized Tucker. In fact, Anna Kasparian is the latest fan of Nick Fuentes. Listen to this.
I do think that having these types of conversations are still worth it because we get a little bit of insight into not only who Fuentes is, but the experiences he had with conservative organizations trying to groom him for their own purposes, and then rejecting him and attempting to bury him the second he asks questions that they deem to be inappropriate, which actually happened to be very appropriate. So I don't know what to make about Nick Fuentes. What I do know is, regardless of how much you want him to go away, he's not going away. This guy had 300,000 people watching one of his live streams recently. He's blowing up. And if you want to know why he's blowing up, look no further than our government's fealty to a foreign government that's currently carrying out atrocities with our resources. If you think my commentary about what Israel has been up to in the Middle East is what is leading to anti-Semitism in the country, how about maybe consider the actions of the Israeli government? Because believe it or not, people around the world do not rejoice in the endless imagery of children with their limbs blown off, or parents picking up their children's body parts and putting them in plastic bags in Gaza. People see that and they get angry. I do.
So that's that is the new alliance, Kasparian and Fuentes against the sort of neocon right.
They're gonna get married.
It's inevitable. It's inevitable. So I don't want to do too long, but my last question is, who will win this debate? So the Heritage Foundation has scrubbed references to Tucker Carlson from their network. This is what came out, and Dinesh, thinking he's winning there, says, and so it begins. But actually,
I think that's the important part to point out here when you say, well, all of these people have smaller podcasts, all of these people are losing influence with the mainstream public. A lot of these people still have a lot of influence within the actual institutions.
Right, that's the question.
And they have the ear of the elites who, like you say, when they're actually doing things, when they work behind the scenes, you don't see them publicly. They are not broadcasting everything to the public the way that we have to. And so if these people, they're not getting through to anybody on the ground, but if they're all on the same page within the elite, then does it matter? And
that's was actually my conclusion, that I think the America First side's winning the public debate, but doesn't necessarily mean the administration will go along with it, or any given administration, which is a key question. But here, Dinesh thinks he's won, because the Heritage Foundation has scrubbed references to Tucker Carlson. But then they clarify, we won't play it, we haven't got time, but he clarifies at some length they haven't done that. Kevin Roberts says, no, I'm totally backing Tucker. And he also says that US should only support Israel if it's in their interest, like any foreign country. He says Christians can critique the state of Israel without it being anti-Semitic, though he does condemn anti-Semitism. And he just completely backs Tucker. So that backfired for Dinesh, and he actually is not cancelled Tucker. Another guy here, Brad Palumbo, says Nick Fuentes won. Dinesh says Nick hasn't won. He isn't moving into the mainstream. Tucker is moving out of it. The fabled years-long effort you invoke is all nonsense. You always had issues with the conservative right that have nothing to do with anti-Semitism. So he basically denies that Nick has won.
Wait, who's the mainstream in this scenario, though? Fox News and CNN with their dwindling numbers, or Tucker with his 16.5 million followers on X?
Yeah, it's the meme, isn't it? Look at me, I'm the mainstream now, with that old Rogan Captain Phillips meme. Hanania's called it for Fuentes. He says, man, this is big. Heritage Foundation has completely dropped any talk of Israel being an ally, shared values, or anything like that. It's just any other country. You only work with if it's in America's interest. Refuses to denounce Tucker. As I said, that was all in that video. I told you the Groypers were winning. Congratulations to Nick Fuentes, the most effective conservative activist of a generation. But then he says, Jewish friends, you need to rethink the conservative movement. But he does say this seems to be a victory for Fuentes. Liam McCollum points out Tucker Carlson is anti-Buckley, a reference to, of course, William F. Buckley, who was accused of gatekeeping on the right with National Review, and it annoyed the likes of Paul Gottfried, who felt the paleocon right were kept out of things by William Buckley, and that was his function, essentially. And Liam here says he is reversing the National Review purge on the right, accepting the new media moment we're in, and acknowledging the reality that the right has changed dramatically, and certain people are here to stay. And he backs it up here. Someone says to him, why are you backing Nick Fuentes? He's awful. He says, well, he's not going anywhere, regardless of what you think. They tried to unperson him, Daily Wire, Con Inc., but it didn't work. And I think that's a compelling case. This classic tweet from Ben Shapiro, which Nick referenced on the show with Tucker. Nick Fuentes was 18 years old, and Shapiro said, accusing any American Jew who is pro-Israel of being an Israel firster is a pure form of anti-Semitism, dunked on this 18-year-old. And someone says, thanks for creating Groyper, saying that this is the origin story.
Well, that is the origin story, isn't it? That Nick tells on these sorts of podcasts. I've only heard it a little bit, but from what I understand, he was part of these conservative groups within his universities, noticed that there was an overwhelming focus on Israel issues rather than domestic America issues, which he took issue with because the movement was supposed to be America first. And then he starts being public about it, and then Ben Shapiro and everybody else dogpiles on him, calls him an anti-Semite, tries to get him cancelled, tries to get him removed from his university, at which point he decides, well, I clearly am onto something here.
Yeah, and as he tells it, Cassie Dillon basically says to him, you don't want to go near that Israel stuff. She's shared text messages recently or DMs saying, no, it's not as he says it. He exaggerates, he distorts. But yeah, certainly in his story, it's exactly that. He was asking just normal questions. Oh, why are they all attacking me? This is weird. I must be onto something. But also, the classic thing, you're radicalizing him further. Why did you do that approach? If you did a different approach, you could have welcomed him in. And
they could have contained it.
Yeah, exactly. But they went too hard against him and created, in their view, I suppose, a monster. I'm staying neutral. But as this person says, Nick Fuentes, after being ostracized by Ben Shapiro at 18, betrayed by friends, fired, banned from every platform, having his bank account frozen, put on a no-fly list, and surviving an assassination attempt, only to become one of the most influential political figures in America. Hard to disagree with. All that did happen to him. Couldn't get an Uber, bank account frozen, couldn't get a plane. Guy came to his house to kill him, who'd killed several people that night. So he's been through a lot, but somehow he's ended up here. And as Tucker says here, does this mean he's won?
I mean, and Ben Shapiro seems irrelevant to me now.
But back then,
I guess that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you won.
Oh, certainly.
So Nick certainly thinks he's won. Tucker says he's won. Hanania thinks he's won. Cernovich, just for some balance, he has a more balanced take. he's quoting JD Vance, who was asked a question about Israel at a Turning Point event, and he says JD's answer was perfect for the times. In the reality of politics, Republicans won't win any new votes by being anti-Israel and would lose some, but the pro-Israel side has to start acting like an ally rather than entitled brat yelling at us and treating us badly. I think there's something in that. The whatever you think of the arguments, the way they've gone about it, trying to cancel Tucker, this beloved figure, and just saying, shut up, you're evil, you shouldn't have Nick. It's like, people love Tucker. He's incredibly likable. He's like the nation's uncle or something. And then you're attacking him like this. It's just not a good strategy. So that's why I say, kind of like Harry was saying, my personal belief is that the public opinion seems to be siding with the America First side. They actually have probably a better argument that, because unless you believe in that biblical precedent for sort of Israel's destiny, which is quite niche. Ted Cruz believes it. Most people don't. Even most Christians don't.
And it's mainly a big evangelical thing in America.
Right. And also, whether you like it or not, this is a neutral observation. As the younger generation doesn't have the same connection to World War II, even that I had with two grandfathers who fought in it. They just don't have it, so they don't have the same sensitivity around that. So they don't think that Israel has a special position. Therefore, I think that's where the argument's going. However, that is very different, as you point out, from what the administration will do, and it's sort of yet to be seen how this will impact the Trump administration and future administrations. So anyway, that's my take.
All right.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.